Have you ever found yourself at a point in life where there's an opportunity to take a step towards your dream, but there's this resistance, this fear, this feeling that comes up that you're just not quite ready? Today, I want to talk about why waiting to be ready might mean waiting forever. Hello there, my name's Paul Heron, and this is the From Zero to Marketing Hero podcast. And this is day 4 of a 365-day challenge to record, upload, and post a podcast a day over the next 12 months. For me, this whole week has been all about getting started, making that first step into something that I found quite daunting and challenging, to be honest. But it's got me thinking about how often we find ourselves in these situations. I know for me personally, there's probably many, but there's a couple of key moments that stand out in my life that I can reflect back on and wonder, in some ways, what if I had the courage to take action earlier than I did? A couple of those that stand out at the moment going through this process are, first off, the decision I made back in mid-2018 to leave the corporate world and finally pursue my dream of becoming self-employed and having a little bit more control over my own destiny. But that is something that I had been grappling with for such a long time. And I probably spent years, probably quite a number of years too long in that position, just waiting for that perfect time to be ready, to feel ready. As I've kind of alluded to in earlier episodes this week, I'm now 5 years plus into this journey. And, this idea of really jumping in the deep end and putting myself out there to the world is something I've been grappling with for the last 5 years. And, again, I've been waiting to be ready. But what are we actually waiting for when we're waiting to be ready? I was listening to Mel Robbins' podcast during the week, actually, and what she was talking about there was this idea that our resistance, we put up these protective measures. For me, it probably looked a bit like perfectionism. I want things to be perfect before I consider myself to be ready to jump out and take an action. I had always looked at that as a positive trait in many ways. It meant that the work that I did was, in my opinion anyway, was to a high quality. It was pushing me to achieve at a higher level. And in some ways, some success did come from that, no doubt. But what I've recently realized is all that is a way of trying to gain certainty, trying to protect myself from the fears that I had about what's going to happen when I finally take these actions. And when I reflect back to the decision to leave my job back in 2018, I reflect back at that decision and the courage that I had to actually follow through on that as one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life. That directly has led to me everything changing. It's led to me exploring these opportunities that I've got. It's led to the success that I've been able to achieve through my coaching business. It's led to Marie and I, my wife and I, being able to relocate ourselves across the other side of the world. We literally moved from Melbourne to Cork in Ireland, and you almost couldn't get 2 points on the globe further away. But it's been an unbelievable experience and an unbelievable adventure that all started by actually following through and taking action on that idea and that dream that I had. And this week has been no different in many ways. It's the culmination of years of waiting to be ready and finally pulling that trigger, finally making that decision to literally jump in the deep end and see what happens. And that's the key distinction. It's moving away from, this perfectionism thing that I have experienced, and I still am tackling that. It's reared its head this week. There are many things that that I've done this week that I have probably wanted to spend much more time perfecting. But that's part of the reason why I have decided and committed myself to this particular challenge. I think it was about Thursday last week, I recorded a bit of a teaser episode for this and, felt great. But come Monday morning this week, I was like, oh my goodness, what have I got myself into? And I really had this strong wave of not feeling ready, almost trying to put it off further. But the thing is, I knew at that point, I had a light bulb moment a few weeks ago, actually, that, it is a now or never situation for me. And, yes, there was some resistance, some fear, but this week has all been about getting started, jumping in the deep end and trusting, moving away from needing to be perfect, but trusting that, whatever happens, whatever feedback I get, whatever results come from the activities I take, I've got what it takes to be able to learn, to continue growing, to continue showing up, and to continue to maintain the courage to follow through and commit on this challenge. The thing is, though, I'm sure that I'm not alone in feeling this way. I actually know that I've had many conversations with many of my clients and friends and family. There is this feeling that can come over us that we just have to keep waiting to be ready. So if you've experienced this, I'd love to start a conversation on this topic. What do we need to do to overcome some of this fear, this worry, and give ourselves permission to just jump in the deep end and see what happens? And, if I reflect back on this week so far, it's been amazing. As I said earlier, Monday morning, I was absolutely petrified about how this might pan out. And a lot of that was because there was so much uncertainty about what people might say, what is going to happen. But the thing is, the second I got started, I just felt momentum starting to build. And, it enabled me, just that act of getting started, making that commitment, taking that first action. I was no longer waiting anymore. I was in motion. And, the tool I sort of referred to yesterday, this idea of taking an action, being able to healthily, reflect in a healthy way afterwards, to get curious about all the feedback that we have available to us, to go through step one before we even think about step number two and build this positive momentum. That cycle can only start once we are started, once we've taken that first step. So, yeah, that's one thing that's come up for me. I've just been thinking about that today as I sort of was having a think about how to approach day 4. This week is about getting started. And, I think maybe there's a fantastic opportunity here for all of us to think about, that one thing that we might have been putting off and how we can go about taking a small step in the direction of making progress. The thing is that all the while we're waiting to be ready, deep down inside, I think we kind of know that we're never going to be ready. This idea that we're keeping ourselves safe and protected through our perfectionism and procrastination and however else that kind of shows up gives us a false sense of security that we're retaining a feeling of control. The thing is, though, once we start something new, anything new, by definition, it's typically outside of our comfort zone and requires us to, take steps, take action outside the familiar. And, the more we can just let ourselves be the beginner, be open to whatever happens and, just get started. And, it's amazing what can happen once we do actually make a start. And, for me personally, that's something that I want to continue to remember. There are definitely those points that I can think back and take the lessons out of them that, maybe I have waited too long in the past. I'm really glad that I decided not to wait any longer with this, and I've just jumped in and committed myself to showing up every day. and who knows where it's going to go. So I might leave it there for today. Again, reach out if you've got any comments, feedback. If you relate to this idea of waiting to be ready, let's start a conversation. Join the Facebook group. It's fantastic to see that there's a few people already sort of signed up in there. Maybe that's the perfect place to start a conversation on this. So thanks for joining me for day 4. I'll be back tomorrow with day 5. Bye for now.